What is the worst reason to have a baby? Why? To save the relationship. It never works, it just drags an innocent baby into a miserable situation. This is more common than people think. I have to wonder if anyone, anywhere, ever has actually improved a relationship by having a child. I'm sure some have managed to extend the life of a troubled relationship by adding a baby to the mix. But improving the relationship? Making it a relationship worth staying in? I don't see that happening. Well, it would have helped Henry VIII. I think you have to specify a son in this situation, but yeah. Imagine if Catherine of Aragon had a son or two. Henry might just be a blip on the radar of English monarchs without all the fuss and bother of 6 wives, etc. But then we wouldn't have had Elizabeth I, and that makes me a little sad. Yeah, he probably wouldn't have needed to create the Church of England either. Imagine an alternative history where the coin hit tails and Henry VIII got his son. Suddenly Catholicism probably gets a century more to reign in England, maybe even stopping the 30-year war from ever happening. Realistically, Catholicism would still have fallen in England, but Christianity would be more plural. All because one sperm was faster than the others. We didn't have a bad relationship before, but it's definitely made our relationship stronger. A lot of other factors have played into that though. My wife was miserable at work, which was bleeding into our relationship. Then, when she got pregnant, she realized that there are so many things in life more important than work, and she generally just became happier. She also realized that drinking alcohol and coffee were both making her feel worse constantly, and she gave those up during pregnancy and stayed off for good, and I joined her. That made our relationship stronger, because we realized so much of our relationship we were both just miserable, then would drink after work and complain about work, and then need coffee in the morning because we were hungover. It probably wouldn't have fixed a really bad relationship, but it certainly improved ours a bit. Same here, our relationship wasn't broken by any means, so we didn't have a kid to fix it, but the stress of caring for a tiny human forced communication about assumptions we each had about our respective roles, etc., in the relationship. Without a kid, some of those assumptions would have been N/A, but others would have probably gone unaddressed and left to fester, which would have caused problems down the road. Correlation does not imply causation. Well, this is nice to hear. To have an organ donor for later? It said worst reasons. Unfortunately, there are people out there with children with terminal illnesses that will purposely have more babies to see if they are donor matches for kidneys and bone marrow. I personally think it's abuse. Save your siblings. Like in My Sister's Keeper. Horrible indeed. I loved that movie and could identify with it so closely as an adoptee. Not the save your sibling part, but the idea of existing solely for someone else's benefit. Those parents, especially the mother, were awful. The book was so much worse than the movie, too. The ending was so horrifying, it's the only book I've ever actually thrown across the room as soon as I finished it. The movie completely changed the ending, I think for the better, but it was still so disturbing. To sell them. Daughters are being sold into child marriage and sons are sold for forced child labor in many countries. Or adoption mills. I know someone who adopted from a Central American country about 20 ago. Wonderful little girl. When the girl was about 13 or 14, she discovered that she had at least 4 siblings who had also been adopted as babies and were living in the US. Makes you wonder. It gets so much worse. After adolescence, girl began to have psychotic episodes. Turns out that she had lived in a nursery much of the first year in her life, and was completely neglected. Yes, that blows up on people at some point. She is now in an institution. In Cambodia in the 80s and 90s there was an elaborate network of adoption mills working with the authorities that resulted in the kidnapping of a huge amount of children. The corruption was exposed all the way up the ladder. Really horrible. Similar thing happened in Israel a long while back. Read up on the Yemenite children affair. My great-aunt's sister was a victim. They were Jewish Yemeni and fled Yemen when my aunt was a baby to escape anti-Semitism. But in Israel, they were oppressed for being Yemeni, so there was no winning. The Israeli government stole Yemeni Jewish babies and adopted them out to white Jewish families. Government only admitted to it as recently as 2016. My aunt is an old woman now and has no living blood family that she knows of. I am related to her through marriage. Her stolen sister and any descendants she may have had are probably out there somewhere, but they will never know each other. It's very sad. Racism destroyed so many families. Having a kid for a specific gender. Yeah, I love the comments after our second daughter was born, so are you going to have a third and try for a boy? Hell no, that's when twin girls happen. If we were destined to have a boy it would have happened. My grandparents had 3 daughters, but they wanted a son. Guess what they did? They fostered baby boys and ended up adopting one. Better than having a house full of children. That's probably a good thing. There are way too many kids in the foster/adoption system as it is. Exactly, and what if you do and ends up being the gender you didn't want? Are you going to be bitter with this kid and resentful? I've worked with kids with autism for 17 years, so that being said I could really care less about gender. I have 2 healthy boys. It's all I could ask for. Health truly is the most important thing. Seriously. As someone who has suffered recurrent pregnancy loss, when I hear parents disappointed about their child's gender, I want to slap them. I just want my future children to be born healthy and alive. Adding a specific anything. Some people think kids are something you order from a menu. I want a daughter who's quiet and respectful and wins national spelling bees and a popular outgoing son who will be star of his football team. Who cares what their actual talents and interests are? My dad was disappointed that my sister and I were both girls, but he helped raise my nephew, and once my nephew hit like 7 it became pretty obvious the issue was less his gender and more that my dad had this picture in his head that his son would be successful in all the ways that he thought he himself would have been if he had had more supportive parents. Unfortunately for him, my nephew shared his personality. Congrats, Dad! You the smartass who likes to talk back and disrespected authority growing up had a smartass daughter who got in trouble for never listening and a smartass grandson who does the same. Note my dad loved my nephew, but damn it was funny to see him have to change the mental image of what have a boy was like. To distract yourself from a traumatic experience, robbed at gunpoint. A long time back, a co-worker told me this after our conversation about what happened. She said it'd distract me. Then she said I was selfish for telling her that was a horrible idea. A lot of people use children as a lackluster attempt at avoiding therapy, which is actually exactly when you shouldn't be having a child, surprisingly enough. You want to bring a child into the world under the idea that you'll give them the best you can so they can be happy, not the other way around. To be responsible for their disabled sibling in the future. Yes, I had a friend tell me she wanted another child so that her disabled son would have someone if she passed away. This is why my parents kept me. My parents tried to pressure me into not joining the military or flight school because who's gonna take care of my brother if something happens to me? My dad has said multiple times since I was like 5 or 6 that I'm gonna have to take care of him when they die. I love my brother, but I want my own life too. My parents recently rewrote their trust so that I have to take care of my brother, without consulting me. They never listen when I say I'm not going to do it. Don't you have to agree and sign something too? The parents here are basically saying any inheritance is contingent upon this person caring for the disabled sibling. Under the law, this person isn't obligated to care for the sibling but will not receive the inheritance unless they do. Essentially, they care for the sibling or get cut out of the will. To please someone else, like your partner or parents/in-laws. Especially when you don't want it 100%. Because religion/God told me to. To fix your relationship/marriage. To live your unfulfilled dreams. To have someone to take care of you when you are old, they are not your labor slaves. To have a legacy, you don't have one. You are not famous, you are forgotten in 3 generations. Yeah, the last one is weird. In my family, the legacy is just our last name. There are lots of girls in my family and my dad is super concerned about there not being enough boys to carry on the family name for multiple more generations. I really want to say to him it's literally just a name and you're gonna be dead, why do you care? Welfare/child support money. Oh. I commented before I read this. I know somebody that admitted to having another kid to get an increase on her food stamps. Pretty sure that in Medicaid was all she received, so I don't know how she thought the extra food stamps were going to make up for all the other costs that come with a child. Basically, have enough kids that you can steal a little bit from each one's governmental assistance. You'll live in squalor which you then use to hold out your hand, using your children as weapons to guilt the government into buying the package deal of the kids, plus you. Wait, what is that CPS van doing here? Where are they taking my meal tickets? What are these scary bits of paper with fine print longer than the main text? What's a lawyer? Where are you going? Hello? Because it's expected of you. Because your partner wants one. Because you think it will make you, or your partner or your relationship better. Babies should never come into the world with a job. Please like and subscribe for more daily content.